Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. China's top officials lay out fiscal plans for 2024 after Premier Li Qiang set the country's GDP target of 5%. Beijing looks to bolster domestic consumption through trade-ins of home goods, while the securities regulator vows to protect small investors by cracking down on market manipulation. Warnings that famine in Gaza is almost inevitable without urgent action, as the World Food Programme says aid deliveries have been blocked by Israeli troops. And a Biden-Trump election rematch looks almost certain after they dominate the Super Tuesday votes. China's top officials in finance and securities have laid out fiscal plans for 2024, a day after Premier Li Qiang set the country's GDP target of 5%. The governor of the People's Bank of China says there's room for the reserve requirement ratio to decline, while the securities regulator vowed to protect small investors by cracking down on market manipulation. And as part of its efforts to bolster domestic consumption, the government's set its sights on encouraging the trade-in of consumer goods. Our correspondent Huang Fei reports.
Well, this afternoon, the country's top economic decision makers covered a wide range of issues, including reform and development, fiscal budget, business and capital market regulation. Officials expressed confidence in the economy, highlighting many positive numbers in 2023. They say that major economic targets were met last year and restructuring efforts were showing results. Investments in high-tech and service industries were up. Consumption and tourism was also another indicator of resilience in the economy.
This year, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce has two tasks to boost consumption. One is to promote the replacement of old consumer goods. The other is to expand consumption of services.
In the future, China will continue to improve business environment create more opportunities for multinational corporations, cutting tax and fees, and helping them with financing. In terms of foreign trade, officials acknowledged a challenging landscape, including slowing global demand, rising protectionism, and the fact that more than 3,000 trade restrictions were implemented worldwide last year. There are a lot of uncertainties, but there are also opportunities. China's foreign trade is on an upward trend, noting a significant increase in exports of new energy products. China will continue to put forth more stimulus to keep foreign trade stable, which includes improving financial services for SMEs and making visa applications easier.
We still have enough tools and enough policy room for maneuvers. We will strike a balance between the short and long term, between stabilizing growth and preventing risks, and between internal and external equilibrium. We will strengthen counter-cyclical and cross-cyclical adjustment, boosting confidence, improve expectations, and keep prices stable so as to create a sound monetary and financial climate.
And in terms of government spending, China will issue ultra-long special treasury bonds, a major step to support national strategic projects. The government will also channel more targeted spending to areas with huge potential, such as rural development. The key message from the economic planners today was to counter unpredictable factors in the world with our own certainty and predictability at home. Huang Fei, CGTN, Beijing.
As China works to encourage the trade-in of household appliances to bolster domestic consumption, our correspondent Xu Xinchen visited an electronics maker in Wuhan to learn how AI is revolutionizing devices at home.
This tiny black flake is as light as a feather and no larger than my thumbnail, yet it is the brain behind modern home appliances, and it enables this to talk, hear, and see.
小 T 小 T， 打开空调。
哦，他们能听到吗？
对对，所以我们有。
Yes, we have installed voice control so that the air conditioners now have ears. These ears can also detect our directions. Let me show you.
向我吹风。
Hey TCL, blow the air towards me. Look, the blades now direct the airflow towards me.
角度进行摆，然后把风吹向我这边。
You can also instruct the air conditioners to direct the airflow away from you for a softer breeze. Artificial intelligence can enable these air conditioners with more features in addition to listening and responding to us. With data collected from daily use, the AI system can monitor and detect malfunctions, suggesting repairs. Moreover, with the algorithm, it saves more energy, up to 40%.
With changes in market demand and improvements in people's quality of life, smart home appliances are actually becoming increasingly common among consumers.
Smart features are giving home appliances new traction. Estimates suggest that over 300 million units of smart home appliances were sold in China in 2023. The market size for smart home appliances in the country is a whopping $97 billion.
Artificial intelligence is revamping home appliances, giving them new attractive features, and in fact, AI is also helping manufacturing become smart so as to ensure better quality and improved efficiency.
For example, this TCL plant in Wuhan has over 11,000 sensors to enable smart manufacturing. And 2 to 3 terabytes of data are generated from the manufacturing process daily. The manufacturer is leveraging the data to create their own version of GPT, or generative pre-trained transformer, so that workers can type and speak to a tablet to find out how the equipment and manufacturing are processing and receive suggested solutions. At the same time, data from the usage of sold products can also help improve product quality.
We have established a digitized full circle from sales to our service. These data are connected and shared throughout the entire process. Therefore, the data will also be fed back to our factory. We use this data to help us make changes for better quality control.
The founder and president of TCL, who is also a deputy for China's National People's Congress, said, new technological breakthroughs are fueling the country's drive for high-quality development.
I believe that the continuous promotion of high-quality development in China's manufacturing industry is the process of forming new productive forces. High-quality development involves achieving industrial transformation and upgrading, driving technological innovation, and establishing the capacity for new industrialization.
And modern technologies such as artificial intelligence are introducing new ideas and attracting new interest to more traditional industries, such as home appliances. Xu Xingchen, CGTN, Wuhan, Hubei Province.
There were no surprises on Super Tuesday as both President Biden and former President Donald Trump recorded resounding victories in the US presidential primaries. The election in November looks set to be a rerun of the 2020 edition, with Biden and Trump making huge strides in securing the Democrat and Republican nominations. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Philip Crowther from the Associated Press, who's in Charleston. So, Philip, Trump dominant in the primaries, and it looks likely now that challenger Nikki Haley is set to drop out.
Yes, and it's going to be happening here in Charleston within the next hour or so. Nikki Haley will be suspending her campaign here in her home state of South Carolina, where she was governor for 6 years. A state also, though, that she lost in the Republican primary last week, garnering about 40% of the vote. A pretty heavy defeat, a pretty embarrassing defeat for her, considering it is her home state. But it showed some of former President Donald Trump's weaknesses, and that is something that Nikki Haley, the former governor here and also the former UN ambassador, has said repeatedly. She says that Donald Trump cannot beat Joe Biden, that she was the only candidate able to do that. Now, the truth, though, is that polls that have come out over the last few weeks do show that Donald Trump very much has the possibility of beating Joe Biden in the election in November. It's certainly going to be a very tight one. So after those defeats for Nikki Haley, and there were plenty of them on Super Tuesday, she is now expected to announce the end of her campaign, but not endorse Donald Trump in that same speech. We've been told that she is going to encourage him to get her voters and independent voters on his side. It is true that there is a split within Republican Party primary voters, those who want Donald Trump very much in their majority, but then in some states 20% or 30 or 40% of the electorate who do not want Donald Trump to be their candidate and want the alternative. That turned out to be Nikki Haley during this primary season. So she leaves this race having won 2 primaries altogether. The relatively insignificant one in Washington, D.C., and then last night the surprise, her winning the primary in Vermont, in the northeast of the country. So where do things go for Nikki Haley from here? Well, she's garnered a lot of headlines during this primary season. She might very well have high political ambitions in the future, maybe a run for president, maybe a run in the Senate, but certainly she will be somebody who will be important in the Republican Party in the future, maybe at a time when the party will be willing to move on from Donald Trump to sort of a renewal of the Republican Party. She might be in line to be one of the most important members at that time.
Well, when we think about this November's election, it's looking like it's going to be 2020 all over again. What's been the reaction to that?
Well, look, both of the candidates who won so handsomely last night, Joe Biden on the Democratic side and Donald Trump on the Republican side, they didn't even mention Nikki Haley or indeed any other opponents in their speeches. A speech in Donald Trump's case at his private golf club in Mar-a-Lago, a very short one. There was a written statement from Joe Biden, no mention of Nikki Haley either. What they have been concentrating on for a while now, and will be concentrating on clearly from now on in until November, is that general election matchup. It is going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again, barring any major surprises. These were relatively easy wins for both candidates last night, but when you look at the opinion of the electorate generally, they are not particularly enthusiastic about it being Trump v. Biden again. Take a listen to some of the voters on this Super Tuesday here in the United States.
I mean, the fact that we have Biden and Trump to choose from, it's disgraceful.
Very disappointed. I wish there were 2 better options.
It's just going to make us look like more of a circus to the rest of the world, which is just disappointing.
At this point, we deserve someone that's not pushing, 80, 90 years old to be in office.
So Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not yet officially the presumptive nominees of their respective parties, but they are likely to get those positions in their parties in a week or 2 weeks' time. And from there on in, well, it's the general election matchup for a whole 8 months. It's going to be 8 months of pretty ugly campaigning, I think we can presume at this point. The next important step are going to be the party conventions in the summer. That is when Joe Biden and Donald Trump, again barring any major surprises, will be crowned as their respective parties' nominees. And in November, you can expect that matchup all over again.
Philip, thank you very much. Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther in Charleston. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. The British Finance Minister delivers his budget, but could it be his last financial statement before an expected election? We'll have the details next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Strengthening the foundation for a future powered by innovation, where high technology, high efficiency, and high quality converge. These 3 pillars are set to propel China's new productive forces and supercharge the Chinese economy into a new era of development. New industries, new models, and new growth momentum. Join CGTN as we guide you through the new productive forces poised to redefine the Chinese economy.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. China's top officials lay out fiscal plans for 2024 after Premier Li Qiang set the country's GDP target of 5%. And Beijing looks to bolster domestic consumption through trade-ins of home goods, while the securities regulator vows to protect small investors by cracking down on market manipulation. The UK's foreign minister says patience is wearing thin over the lack of humanitarian aid reaching Gaza. David Cameron is meeting with Israeli cabinet minister Benny Gantz in London. Gantz, a political rival of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has also been in the United States for talks with senior officials, a trip which Netanyahu says he did not authorise. Well, let's go to Israel now and talk to our correspondent in Tel Aviv, Alex Cadier. So, Alex, what's come out of this meeting?
Well, Robin, it's a very tough meeting. That is what's being expected. You heard David Cameron earlier today really looking to make a point to Benny Gantz that patience is wearing thin. That is clearly the message that Benny Gantz also heard in Washington from Vice President Kamala Harris, from Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor there. Two key allies for Israel being very, very tough, expressing their frustration with the humanitarian situation in Gaza. That was certainly the message from the United States, and one that will be repeated by David Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, in his meeting with Benny Gantz as well. And then once those meetings are over, there has also been harsh criticism of Benny Gantz for having the trip in the first place here in Israel, and he will be facing some of that opposition when he returns after his trip to London. So certainly an example showing that growing frustration from Israel's key allies is very present, and that pressure is mounting on Israel to do a lot more to maximize, as the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said, humanitarian aid going to Gaza. And of course, in the last few days, we've seen the situation is absolutely dire in the Gaza Strip. WHO pointing to children dying in hospital of malnutrition, dehydration, and so that gives you a sense of the urgency and the pressure being put by Israel's allies to find a solution quickly.
Well, as you say, international pressure growing for some kind of ceasefire deal. What's the latest on those talks to try and achieve that?
Well, they're ongoing in Cairo. That means a second day of extension of these talks. We know Israel is not present in person, but Egyptian security officials have said they are speaking with their Israeli counterparts, so the communications are happening between both sides. Hamas says they want to continue the negotiation. So if you wanted to be optimistic, at least a very cautious optimism, you could say, well, at least the talks haven't entirely collapsed and both sides are still communicating through mediators. We know that Israel did not attend in person, accusing Hamas of not providing a list of those surviving Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. Hamas saying that simply because of Israel's military operation, they can't take stock of which hostages are still alive. So these ceasefire talks ongoing in Cairo, clearly up against it. 4 days left until that deadline set by the Israelis of March 10th, before they then go in to Rafah, an operation that the United States and others have called entirely unacceptable. So those talks ongoing, no breakthrough yet, but still no collapse either.
Alex, thank you very much. Our correspondent Alex Cadier in Tel Aviv. The World Food Programme says its first attempt in a fortnight to deliver aid to northern Gaza has been blocked by Israel's military. Israel has not commented on these specific allegations, but says it's doing all it can. There are warnings that famine is almost inevitable without urgent action. The World Health Organization says children in the north of the enclave are dying of starvation. The Palestinian Health Authority says at least 18 people have died from malnutrition and dehydration. The death toll in Gaza since the conflict began in October last year has now passed 30,700 people. Well, let's go to Gaza now and talk to our correspondent in Rafah, Akram Al-Sasri. So, Akram, how much aid is reaching Gaza at the moment?
Minimum aid is reaching Gaza. That has been expressed by different UN actors who have been
confirming the fact that people in Gaza are dying because of the starvation, are dying because of the lack to humanitarian assistance. The latest humanitarian assistance that was dropped by the American airplanes and by other regional airplanes, where most of them were dropped on the sea, and they were not of benefit for the people of Gaza. People of Gaza have been complaining about the quality of the work that has been done, and have been underlining the fact that this humanitarian assistance should enter Gaza in such a regular way, in a structured manner, and that should be delivered to the authorities or UN organizations on the ground, so that they would be able then to deliver them to the people who need them. In Gaza Strip, around 56, 57 truckloads were entering yesterday and today, which means less than 0.5% of the overall need of the Gaza Strip, which is 1,000 truckloads a day. So the situation is still dire, and it's even getting more dire by the lack to decent food supplies to the people of Gaza, and even decent water supplies.
So give us an update more broadly on the situation in Gaza at the moment.
The situation continues to be extremely dire. The bombardment is still continuous. In the last 1 hour or so, 3 houses were targeted in 3 different areas in the Gaza North. In Jabalia area in particular, 7 people were killed. There is still unconfirmed number of people who are injured, and they might also be dying anytime soon because of their wound. There was a heavy fire exchange in Ash-Shaja'iyya area in the east of Gaza City, and it is still continuous, and the bombardment could be heard from far apart from that area. In An-Nusayrat area in central Gaza, a house was targeted, and also there is unconfirmed number of people who were injured and killed. And now we are waiting to hear the news about the situation in that particular area. In Hamad City, in the west of Khan Yunis, people are still asked to evacuate their homes. People are arrested. Houses are investigated, houses are searched, and the Israeli soldiers are staying in some of the apartments and destroying some of them. There were reports about people who are still thrown on the ground, dead. No one is being able to collect their body. No ambulance services are allowed in, and the situation continues to be very dire. In Rafah also, there were some incidents of bombardment, artillery fire by the Israeli forces who are deployed not far away from the Rafah eastern border. So overall, the situation continues to be very dire. People continue to die and get injured, and more homes continue to be destroyed.
Akram, thank you very much. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Rafah. The UK government is announcing its spring budget before a possible general election. With the economy officially in recession, the Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt says growth will be stronger than expected this year. But while inflation is easing, many households are still struggling with the cost of living. Tax cuts have been in focus in the run-up to the announcement, but also how to pay for them. Let's talk to our correspondent, Yolo Abdavith, who's in central London. So, Yolo, this could be the last budget before a general election. How important is it for the ruling Conservative Party?
It's very important for any government in any country, to be honest, because these are the spending and tax reviews and what they propose to do for the short term, for the next 6 months or so. It is important because the UK is officially in recession, and Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, the Finance Minister, was very keen to project that things will get better. That's why he tainted and coloured the choices that he'd made and the ruling Conservative Party are making as they are still in government, because, as you say, there may well be a general election later this year. We don't know whether this is actually the last budget before an election, or maybe there'll be another statement, a finance statement in the autumn, and a general election after that. There has to be an UK election before the end of January 2025. So it was interesting, on the back of a recession, on the back of the lack of growth, national debt increasing, and a general feeling of uneasiness with the cost of living crisis, and how many people are assessing not just the last few years in the UK, but the last 14 years. And that's what Jeremy Hunt had to contend with today. That's why when he made some eye-catching announcements on tax cuts with national insurance payments for every individual worker in the UK, reducing that again, he was trying to show that actually if you trust in us, things will improve. And that's why he also took some of the opposition Labour Party policies in terms of taxing people who are non-domiciliary here, that they work here, but obviously they have homes elsewhere, they have tax affairs elsewhere. Now they will be taxed after 4 years. And he also looked at other issues to do with productivity to try and strengthen the economy. So he was trying to please all sides of the Houses of Parliament behind me, but also, of course, to buy votes for the next general election.
Dynamism in an economy doesn't come from ministers in Whitehall. It comes from the grit and determination of people who take risks, work hard and innovate. Not government policies, but people power. It is to unleash people power that we today put this country back on the path to lower taxes.
So what does what we've heard today in this budget tell us about how the UK economy is doing after the pandemic and after Brexit?
It is, and you'll be very hard-pressed to hear anybody talking about Brexit from the two major parties, actually. They simply don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of reference to the COVID pandemic and the impact, the obvious huge impact that had on the economy. And also people are talking about the energy crisis because of the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East. Those are the things that they try and get people to remember because of policies here. Now, Jeremy Hunt, he was on his feet for over an hour, quite schoolmasterly in the way he actually portrayed some of the policies coming up. But the truth is in the detail, and that's what people will be poring over. Families, workers will be looking at that overnight, tomorrow, the next few days, to see how they are impacted by this budget.
Iolo, thank you very much. Our correspondent Iolo Ap-Dafydd in central London. The headlines again. China's top officials lay out fiscal plans for 2024 after Premier Li Qiang set the country's GDP target of around 5%. A Biden-Trump election rematch looks almost certain in November after they both dominate the Super Tuesday votes. And warnings that famine in Gaza is almost inevitable without urgent action, as the World Food Programme says that aid deliveries have been blocked by Israeli troops. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We'll be back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. But for now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.